Hi. So I decided to do this project on a concept called sharenting, Sharenting. And it's the issue of child exploitation on social media by parents. It's an emerging concern with several dimensions. Why parents may share their child's lives online with positive intentions, such as documenting milestones or connecting with loved ones, certain practices are exposing children to risk. And I will admit I'm guilty of probably sharing too much about my children's lives on social media, especially with my younger son, because I was in my 20s and Facebook was new and I was just really excited that I had a baby. I'm trying to be a little bit more cautious about my sharing things about my daughter. Um, so, this is one reason why I wanted to do some research on this topic. I'm also kind of curious about the more extreme um, version of this, which is using children, exploiting children for likes, and doing it in a way to meet challenges. One of these in particular, and I will admit that I have found them myself in the past to be kind of funny, is the cheese throwing challenge. Um, I've never done that. I would never do that. But it was a viral video on social media not too long ago where you have an infant or a toddler who's crying and you throw cheese to see and capture their reaction. It's really similar to other trends out there. There's one where they crack eggs on children's heads to see how they would react. And it's pretty interesting to see some of the reaction of children to having their parents crack an egg on their head. Um, there's a lot of issues with this, obviously. Um, it's not ethical, it's not fair. We're going to go into some of these key concerns later, but with the cheese throwing in particular, it kind of reduces the child to a prop for entertainment um, and for amusement on social media. It's problematic because children are treated like I said, props at the expense of their dignity. It violates their consent and their autonomy. And oftentimes it's toddlers and infants who are the props of things like this. And like I said, this is an extreme form of sharenting. I'm not going to go into all these challenges, but I just wanted to bring it out there that there is this concept out there on social media where parents are trying to meet these challenges. And it does fall into this blanket of what sharenting is. I'm not going to go into the challenges, but I do want to highlight some of these ideas in sharenting and why it's not a good practice for parents on social media, and why it kind of sets the why parents should be aware of this, because it also sets the standards for their children later on when their children are older and they are on social media. Um, Parents need to be a role model on how to be ethical online and what to share and what not to share, and perhaps what behaviors they want their children to model. Um, so, from an emergent inquiry perspective, these actions disregard the principle of respecting children's agency and rights. Like I said, as they have no way to respond how they are being treated or how they're even represented online. And as far as the challenges like the cheese throwing, it may seem kind of harmless to a lot of people when you call out on social media. When you call out this practice on social media, you're considered a Karen. I don't know if you've heard that term, but it's just an overly concerned person. Um, it can be confusing for the child when their parents are trying to um, get likes and content by humiliating them basically online. Like I said, it's confusing and distressing for the child, and especially children who lack the verbal skills to express their discomfort. And when they're shared online, they can shape how the child is perceived by others. So this kind of sets the stone for issues like bullying later on in the child's life, especially if it's a video that went viral of the child being subject to these challenges. And then later on, when they're older, they're known as the cheese throwing child or other things. And this leads into the digital footprint concern. Basically, once it's out there, it's out there. It's really hard to remove it from the internet. And this content can follow them into adolescence and even into adulthood, and can really harm them in the future for things like jobs, scholarships in colleges, and other issues. And I don't think parents really consider the full effect of these viral videos. And like I said, this is the extreme form of challenging or with challenges. I'm not going to go too much into this, but I do want to kind of highlight that. It also kind of normalizes this. It normalizes exploitation of children, like the cheese throwing when it becomes viral. Parents can see this as funny, and they just want more content, so they try to meet more challenges, and it just normalizes exploiting the child's vulnerability for public attention, um, and it's just disrespectful. Um, and as someone who is currently working on my teaching license for school librarianship, one topic that we often discuss with young children, especially once they get into third grade, is how to be um, digital citizens and teaching them ethical behavior online. If parents aren't modeling that behavior at a young age with their children, it's hard for children once they get older and they start getting online to understand that this is not appropriate behavior. So I'm going to go on and address the idea of sharing. And like I said, the challenges are kind of the extreme end of sharing. Usually it's done when parents share information about their kids or pictures of their kids. It's not done in such a harmful way intentionally. It's more of like, I'm proud of my kid. But that can also lead to some issues further on down the line for children. So I'm going to get into just the basic practice that parents do on their social media of sharing pictures or birthday party videos and stuff like that, and why we as early childhood educators should be concerned with this, and how we can kind of help guide parents along on being more responsible on their social media in regards to sharing information or pictures about their children. So we'll go on. So as I'd mentioned before, I was kind of interested in this topic as a parent myself. I'm guilty of sharing information about my kids online without even being aware that I'm sharing a lot of personal information. This is different from the challenges I mentioned in the first slide, where it's kind of the extreme form of sharenting, almost on the lines of, I would say, abuse. But I wanted to just bring up this very simple and innocent act and behavior that parents do on social media, things that they may not realize that they're exposing their children to risk. And I was also kind of curious about the research out there in regards to parents' behavior on social media with their children. And I came across the term sharenting. I'd never heard it before. And it was defined in a dissertation by an ETSU student, Christina Bear. She defined the act as it's the act of parents sharing content related to their children on social media. And as I had mentioned before, it's really innocent and really easy to do. You know, your baby's born, you want to post a picture. It's their first birthday, you want to post a picture or a video. Their first steps, you want to post a picture, or first day of kindergarten, so you post the picture. And you may be unaware of all the content, all the information you're actually leaking when you do this. And it could be as simple as, for example, like the first day of kindergarten, you have a plaque and it says, your child's name, and it's first day of kindergarten. You may release the information that the teacher's name is Miss Smith and that they go to, I don't know, Ridgeview Elementary. So right there, you're not really thinking about it, but it's there for everybody to see. And now people know where your kids go to school and what teacher even. Another way that people can take information from this content that you put online is through the metadata. So every time you take a photo of something, there's content attached to that file. that you can pull off. And it includes things like the time, the date, and location that that photo was taken. A lot of people don't realize this, but you're exposing your child to a lot of risk when you upload images. So this dissertation, like I said, defined what sharenting is, and she analyzed images on Instagram by using the hashtag "Let Them Be Little." I guess the best way to explain what a hashtag is, if you think of a platform such as Facebook or TikTok or Instagram as a book, and in the back of the book you have the indices. Well, hashtags kind of function in the same way for the platform. So for a hashtag, you would put the number sign and then like the phrase "Let them be little," or I don't know, it could be anything, child's first day at kindergarten. And you can search that much in the same way as you would search or use the back of the book to find information in the main part of the book by the numbers. So it works in the same way. So she analyzed the implications of parents posting images of their children online. And like I said, she looked particularly at the hashtag "Let Them Be Little." The research highlights risks such as the exposure of personal information, including child's name, age, and location. It suggests that such oversharing may put children's safety at risk, as once images are uploaded, they become publicly accessible. This is kind of, like I said, an emergent concern in early childhood education. And I think as educators, we kind of serve a pretty good role to help parents understand the implications of their practice of their behavior online with sharenting. Also, I'm in school to get my teacher's license for school librarianship. And one of the things that we do teach young children in elementary school, particularly come third grade, is ethical behavior online, being digital citizens. And a lot of that is teaching them to be cautious about sharing content online, teaching them to be respectful online of others. Um, and I think parents need to understand that they're setting the framework for their child. Um, if they're not practicing ethical behavior and safety online with young children at an early age, then how do they expect their older children, once they start getting online, to do the same? So we're going to look at some of the key concerns about sharenting. Those include privacy violation, the exploitation of fame or profit. That kind of falls into the challenges, or the challenges kind of fall in there. Then there's the predatory risk, mental and emotional impacts of sharing too much about your children online, some of the legal and ethical concerns, and cyberbullying and online reputation. Okay, so we'll discuss these. So I've already kind of touched on this. So sharenting can violate or have privacy violations for children. So oftentimes parents share children who are too young to consent to having their lives shared online, and their digital footprint. They're creating their digital footprint without any input from the child. And like I said, the digital footprint kind of follows you, um, and it's a new concept because now we have children that are basically born online, and they have this content that's going to follow them the rest of their lives. Basically, it's really expensive and really difficult to scrub the internet of your image and your content. I've tried to do it myself, and it's not always easy. You can, it's time consuming, but it's not always easy. Um, and again, posts can include sensitive information, like I had mentioned before, even though it may be unintentional, like just simply having those little plaques that says first day of kindergarten, with the teacher's name and school. You also have, like, for example, child's first birthday, you post a picture, it's on the date of their birth, and they're a year old. So it's not too hard to figure out when that child was born. Um, and this can expose the children to really malicious actors out there who may want to steal their identity. It's a pretty scary place. The internet can be a very scary place. So that's just one of the key concerns with sharenting. So this exploitation for fame or profit. So this kind of falls into those challenges I was talking about earlier, where parents are just creating content and hoping that their content goes viral. I don't think people understand or realize that you can actually make money off viral videos if you create an account on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, and that account is real popular and you've got millions of followers. You can sell that account to companies and corporations because you have an audience. So some parents will use their children to generate this content for social media, um, for fame, sponsorships, or monetary gain, sometimes prioritizing engagement over their children's well being. I've seen this countless times on social media where it's very obvious that the parent is using their child to generate likes. And there's always people in the comments criticizing the parents, and they're just hush. It's really sad. Because people realize this is not fair, this is unethical, but then you also have the other side of the coin where people are like, this is funny, we want to watch it. So it's a hard battle to fight, and I think it needs to go beyond just, I don't know, education is definitely key, but policy, some policies in place, especially with these social media corporations, to understand that this is unethical and it's actually hurting children. Um, so it also causes some issues for the children because they live in this household where their parents are constantly videotaping them for content, and it may pressure them to perform or not understand boundaries. So it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. So this one, predatory risks. I don't think people. I don't know. Maybe people do it intentionally or they're just not thinking about it. I'm not sure, but oftentimes you'll see parents sharing videos of their children in the bath, or in really semi-private moments, and this can make them targets for online predators. And I've mentioned this before. A lot of times, your content, your files, your video files, your photos, they have metadata, and in that metadata, you have, your location, your time, all this information that people can pull off those files. Um, I've seen some really scary videos out there on social media, parents putting their toddlers and young children in kind of risky positions. Um, and, like I said, there are groups of people on social media who call these parents out and are like, hey, that's just not cool. But then there's also the other side of the coin that's like, just let them do whatever they want with their kid. And it's just something that I think as professionals in early childhood education, we need to work on um, explaining these risks to parents, the risks that they're putting their children in. So this is another mental and emotional impacts of sharing, even if you're doing it in a very non-malicious way. As your child grows, they may become embarrassed by the photos that you posted 10 years ago, or feel resentful or violated by the content that you shared. Um, I've actually, I've actually deleted one of my Facebook accounts that I started when I had it before my son was born. I deleted it, but I downloaded all the content because you can download the archive. And I gave my son the only access to it because it was the only photos that he had that I have, because most of my photos are digital. So it was basically a photo album that he can access through my Google Drive of pictures of him from when he was little. And that stuff's no longer online. So I told him, like, you can do with this as you please. Just don't delete the file because I want these memories, basically. But it was really important because his father and I are no longer together. So these are some of the only photos he has of us as a family. And so I give him the authority basically to do with what he wants with those photos. Um, So yeah, the public exposure from a young age may affect children's understanding of privacy and self-esteem. I honestly think he appreciates that more than me having that same Facebook account up of photos from when he was 3 or 4, and it's a picture of him and his dad and me and his half sister. I think he'd rather have it accessible through privacy, in a private way, than having it out there. It's kind of like this concept with back in the day we had photo albums, family photo albums, and you want to reflect. It's important to reflect back on the past, but you just maybe not want to share it with the public. So that's one way that I've gotten around the sharing in the past of my son, is having that content still there. It's not deleted, but only he can access it, and only he can decide who to access it or who to share it with. So in the US, there are a few regulations to protect children from excessive or inappropriate online exposure by their parents. So I think the best way to address this would probably be policy changes to where platforms aren't allowed to have that content on their site. If it's a type of exploitation or deemed as abuse, then it should be deleted or it should be able to be flagged to be deleted. Also, children who are featured in these viral videos, if the videos are generating any type of money for the parents, the children are not often compensated. So that's an issue to be addressed as well. So I think I mentioned this before, but cyberbullying and online reputation, this goes into that digital footprint. It's really hard to get rid of online content. It's really expensive and it's really time consuming. And oftentimes it's not possible. You can share a photo of your baby or a video, and if someone makes a screencast of it and shares it, it can be shared multiple times, and it's really hard to track down. But that content can later be used by peers to bully or harass the child. So if a video goes viral, like the cheese throwing video, and your child is in high school later and someone realizes, oh, it's the cheese throwing baby, it's just setting up a bad precedence, I guess, for that child later on in their life. Um, you're also kind of shaping your child's identity without their consent, especially online. And we are, unfortunately, in the digital age, and we're not getting rid of it. So it's something that parents really need to be considering when they share things about their children online. Respecting children's rights in early childhood education. Early childhood education emphasizes the rights of the child, including the right to privacy, dignity, and a voice in decisions affecting them. I think this can also be transferable to the digital world. We need to make sure we're considering that as educators, um, that we need to respect their rights online and how practices, not just our own practices, but the behavior of the parents are affecting these children's rights. Um, so the concept of agency, even in young children, is central to early childhood education, and educators can model how to respect a child's autonomy when sharing information or images about them. And this can be as simple as just practicing consent. If your early childhood educator center has a social media account, just asking the child, especially if there's been permission given by the parents that you can share their content. It would be a good practice to ask the child, say, "Hey, I just took a photo of you. It's a really cute photo. You want to see it? Would you mind if I put it online?" And I think that just sets a good example for the child about practicing consent and having ethical behavior in regards to sharing information and content online. So, creating safe spaces, we're all about creating safe spaces in early childhood education, and we can do that with our online presence as well. We have strict policies. A lot of early childhood education centers have strict policies. You usually have to sign a consent form if you want your child's photo shared online. Um, so, these policies can kind of serve as a model for the family. We can emphasize the importance of using images responsibly, such as ensuring photos are shared only with consent and in private, secure ways. Digital literacy for parents. So, a lot of families may not really understand the risk associated with sharing content online. And at centers, we can kind of incorporate digital literacy education into family engagement efforts, even if it's something as simple as having some pamphlets out explaining the risk, so the parents can be educated about it. Um, and this education can kind of extend to teaching parents to critically assess how much they share about their children and why. I think that's probably the most important part, is getting parents to slow down and really critically think about why they're sharing a photo and to reflect on that. It's just so easy to post something on your Facebook account of your kid, and within a few minutes have a few likes and loves. And I think it's replacing kind of that human need to connect. I mean, it is really. And I personally would prefer to have photos sent to me in the mail, like printed photos. I like photo albums. I like my fridge covered in pictures. Some people may not. I understand. It's clutter. But if parents actually sit down and really reflect on why they're sharing this content, then maybe we can help them to not share as much or be more critical about what they're sharing. It's just something, since we are in this unique position to be with their children on a regular basis and we have that influence over how they're parenting and what they're doing, is something that we should address in our centers and something that we could kind of help change the way children see the internet, because it's a new tool. It's a new tool. And with any tool comes um, a learning curve. And we're still learning how this affects us. It's how it affects society and politics and everything. So it's definitely an issue that we need to address in early childhood education, and not just screen time. I understand the importance of limiting screen time, but just the behavior and how we interact with this new tool. Um, like I said before, we're setting that model for children, and how they interact with online content and the digital world. So this is just again expanding on what I said before, but modeling respect for privacy in our centers, so we can foster environments that respect children's privacy. Educators can help families adopt similar values at home. For example, highlighting the importance of teaching children about consent by asking them, "Hey, is it okay if we show this picture to your parents? And would you mind if we post it online? Or if you don't want it online, we won't put it online." So I think by modeling that behavior, we can encourage parents to think critically about what they're sharing, and or any of the stories that they're sharing about their children, if it actually aligns with their best interests. I think that the modeling is probably the best way that we can address these issues with parents that um, have children in our centers. So, long term perspective on this, I think it's important that we remember that the content that is being generated is a digital footprint that's there. It's going to be there as long as the internet's there, of these children. And since we are early childhood education emphasizes developmentally appropriate practices and how these practices influence and affect children in the long term, we need to look at that digital footprint and keep that in our mind. And we needed to address this issue with parents. Like I said, sharing decisions today can shape how children perceive themselves and their relationship in the future. So we're really setting the groundwork for a child's self esteem as they age. Especially, like I said, if it's a viral video or something in that regards, we're really setting that up for the child as they become older. Um, and as educators, we can help families understand that preserving children's dignity now supports their self esteem and identity later. So it's an important an important practice that I think we need to keep in mind as we move forward with early childhood education. So, as I mentioned before, ethical role of educators. So, as educators in early childhood education, we do have an ethical responsibility to advocate for the well-being of the whole child. This includes addressing modern issues like online privacy and exploitation. Um, we advocacy might involve creating awareness campaigns or partnering with policymakers to support protections for children in the digital age. And I've addressed this in other slides, but I think it's really important that we keep this in our mind, that what is being shared of children without their consent right now is going to affect them later. It is digital permanency. It's there. It's really hard to take down, and it's going to set the groundwork for all kinds of things. We're not getting rid of the internet. It's not happening. We rely on it way too much. And we really need to address these issues. We have a great position in our centers to provide education for parents, but I also think we need to start working on advocating for policy changes, especially on these platforms, to address issues of child exploitation and abuse, and being a little bit more um, scrutinizing how child abuse is defined. Um, so that way, when we see something online that is definitely, in our view as educators, seen as an infringement on a child's rights, that we can say, okay, that is borderlining, that is abuse, that is child abuse, and we can advocate to have that taken off the platform. It's just one thing that I think we do need to address going forward in early childhood education. So now, real quick, we're going to look at the implication from the emergent inquiry perspective. So the issue of child exploitation on social media by parents and its implication for young children connects closely to the principles and practices of emergent inquiry in early childhood education. Emergent inquiry is rooted in child-centered and constructivist approaches. It emphasizes children's agency, rights, and respect for their voice and perspectives. So let's kind of explore this relationship a little bit. So in emergent inquiry, we value the child's agency, and we recognize that children are capable of making decisions and expressing their preferences in meaningful ways. The way that we can connect this concept with sharenting, because we've obviously seen that sharenting overrides the children's agencies, because there's no consent in the decision of sharing their images or their milestones. But from an emergent inquiry perspective, parents and educators should empower the children to have a voice in how their likeness or stories are shared. And I've addressed this before, just asking the child, hey, do you want your image shared? Is one way to connect the principle of emergent inquiry and also to respect the child's rights and their agency. So, ethical relationships and collaboration. Emergent inquiry is relational, focusing on co construction of knowledge and ethical engagement between children, families, and educators. I think one way we can connect this emergent inquiry principle in regards to this ethical issue with sharenting is to be able to protect the child's dignity and well-being in digital spaces is just to collaborate with families and help develop this understanding, and also maybe create like a family agreement about digital privacy or shared norms for documenting and celebrating children's milestones within the program and at home. I think this would be a good practice to engage in centers. Just one, the education with parents and that dialogue, but then also sitting there and collaborating on a parent agreement of being like, okay, I understand these risks, so we aren't going to post happy, where we just post content just for the sake of posting content. I think this would be a good practice that we can start in our centers. I think I mentioned this before, but as part of emergent inquiry, we really like to encourage reflection by children, educators, and families as a way to deepen our understanding about things. And as educators, we can help families reflect on why and how they are sharing their children's lives online. Just simple questions like, what does this post mean for your child now and in the future? And, how can we celebrate milestones while we're still respecting the child's privacy? I think this helps support thoughtful decision making at home for the family and will help ensure the child's well being and future safety concerns. So, with a rights based framework, so an emergent inquiry is rooted in the recognition of children's rights, which emphasize the principle of participation, protection, and provision. So, from a rights based perspective, children have the right to privacy and protection from harm, including online exploitation. Um, so, emergent inquiry practices challenged adults to consider how their actions support or infringe upon these rights. I think this is kind of an important thing to keep in mind when we're addressing these issues with the parents and finding ways that children's rights are still protected, but parents can still share information is an important nexus in addressing this issue with families in our centers. So, just a recap of things that we can do as early childhood educators. Policy development, collaborating with families to create policies around photographing and sharing children's images within the program, discussing content and privacy as an integral part to children's rights, family education, like I've mentioned before. We can offer workshops on digital literacy, privacy, and the long-term implication of sharenting. We can encourage families to reflect on how emergent inquiry principles can influence their online practices. And then modeling respectful practices in our centers. In documentation, educators can model ethical sharing by focusing on process-oriented, de-identified, or anonymized representation of children's work or play. I think this is a really important part is the modeling in our own centers so that parents see that it can be done without oversharing information. And then empowering children's voices, encouraging children in conversation about sharing, helping them understand concept of consent and privacy in developmentally appropriate ways. And I think this is probably the most important part is modeling that behavior with young children. Because as I said, it's the internet, it's the digital age. We're not getting rid of it. And we're teaching these children how to have ethical and safe behaviors online. And I think that starts honestly, I think it starts from birth with the parents' behavior. So, in conclusion, emergent inquiry practices provide a strong ethical and practical framework for addressing the complexities of sharenting and child exploitation on social media. By prioritizing children's agency, fostering reflective practices, and representing or respecting their rights, educators can guide families towards more intentional and respectful digital habits, ultimately supporting the holistic well-being of the young children.